The first time I said the words out loud, I was standing barefoot in the kitchen, holding a phone that had already gone cold in my hand. Daniel's dead. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was flat, mechanical, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the response I got. Sweetheart, can this wait? We're right in the middle of Amanda's birthday dinner. It was my mother's voice, calm and chipper, the clinking of wine glasses and distant laughter in the background. Amanda, my younger sister, had just turned 40. Apparently, there was a caterer, a signature cocktail, and a custom cake with edible gold flakes. My husband of 11 years had collapsed at his desk just an hour earlier, and my mother wanted me to wait until tomorrow. That night, I sat on the floor in Grace's room, holding my 8-year-old daughter against my chest as she finally drifted off to sleep. She didn't know yet. She thought Daddy had to work late. I didn't have the strength to tell her. Not then. Not after the silence from my family. Not after the way my father said, "You should probably call the insurance company first thing tomorrow." I couldn't sleep. My body ached, not just from the grief, but from holding everything together for a child who had already lost too much. At 3:14 a.m., I wandered into Daniel's home office. His coffee mug still sat on the desk, half full. The smell of him, cologne, leather, paper, still hung in the air. I touched his chair. It rolled slightly. I broke. There was a time when life had been so gentle, so beautifully ordinary. We met during our sophomore year at the University of Minnesota. I was flunking macroeconomics, and he was the charming TA who stayed after class to explain depreciation curves like they were poetry. He had this crooked smile and a quiet laugh that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I fell in love with his kindness before I even noticed his eyes. Daniel proposed at graduation. He'd tucked the ring into the spine of my diploma. I said yes before he even asked. Everyone told us we were too young, that we hadn't lived enough, but we didn't want to live without each other. He got his MBA and landed a job at a financial advisory firm in Minneapolis. He wasn't flashy, but clients trusted him. He was honest, steady, real. We waited 5 years to try for a baby. Then came the heartbreak. 2 miscarriages, 1 failed IVF cycle, and the aching emptiness of a nursery that stayed a guest room. Then Grace, a miracle after years of pain. I was on bed rest the last 2 months of the pregnancy, and Daniel turned into a caregiver the world never saw. He massaged my swollen feet, cooked my bland cravings, read parenting books aloud in silly voices. When she was born, he cried harder than I did. She fit in his hands like porcelain, and he held her like she might shatter. He coached her soccer team, even though he didn't know a thing about soccer. His Google search history was filled with drills and cleats and how to braid hair for game day. Every school recital, every doctor's appointment, he was there. His calendar was color-coded with her activities. He once rescheduled a board presentation so he wouldn't miss her 3rd grade science fair. There were signs. He brushed off the chest tightness as indigestion, the shortness of breath as stress. Our doctor said aspirin, less salt, more walks. We promised to do better, but we didn't. Life kept moving. That Tuesday started like any other. Daniel made dinosaur-shaped pancakes while I packed Grace's lunch. He kissed us both on the forehead. "Don't forget the maple syrup, the real stuff," he said with a wink. At 10:47 a.m., Amanda, his assistant, called. Her voice cracked. He collapsed. "They're taking him to Abbott Northwestern." I dropped my coffee. The mug shattered. I left Grace with our neighbor Ellen and sped toward the hospital, whispering prayers I no longer believed in. By the time I arrived, Daniel was already gone. I touched his face, still warm, still Daniel. I begged him to wake up. I waited for the punchline, for the moment when someone would say, "Just kidding, this was all a mistake." But it never came. That was the beginning of the end. The next part was somehow even worse. They pronounced him dead at 11:23 a.m. I got there at 11:29. 6 minutes. That's all that separated Daniel from my arms. From one last goodbye, from one more second, I sat in the hospital chapel for what felt like hours, holding the ring he always fiddled with when he was thinking. The world had gone on outside as if nothing had happened, as if my husband hadn't just vanished. The social worker gave me a checklist. Pick a funeral home, burial or cremation, flowers, obituary, music. None of it made sense. I was expected to function like a bride planning a wedding, except everything hurt. That evening, I picked Grace up from school. Her backpack bounced with every step as she ran to the car. She opened the door, climbed in, and asked, "Did Daddy get the syrup?" I pulled over before I even answered. I couldn't drive like this. I took her hand. "Grace," I said softly, "something really sad happened today." Her eyes narrowed, trying to decode my face. "Daddy's heart got very sick. The doctors couldn't fix it. He died this morning." She blinked. "Forever?" I nodded. Her scream didn't sound human. She clung to me like she was drowning. "I want Daddy. Please, please get him back." All I could do was hold her and break with her. That night, Grace slept in our bed, wrapped in one of Daniel's t-shirts. I curled around her, silent sobs racking my body as she whimpered in her sleep. I needed my mom. I needed someone to be the adult. I called. She picked up after 5 rings, laughter in the background. "Rachel, can I call you back?" Amanda's cake just came out. I could barely get the words out. "Mom, Daniel's dead. He died this morning. His heart gave out." There was silence, then muffled speech. She came back on. "Oh my goodness, are you sure? Maybe it's a mistake." "I saw his body, Mom." "Well, this is quite a shock, but sweetheart, it's Amanda's 40th. We've got guests here from out of town. The caterer's still serving. Can you manage tonight? We'll come by tomorrow." I stood there, mouth open, phone still pressed to my ear long after the call ended. I called my father next. His first question wasn't, "How are you?" or "What can we do?" It was his life insurance up to date? I couldn't feel anything anymore. Numbness is its own kind of agony. The next few days were a blur. Grace had nightmares every night. I didn't sleep. I wrote the obituary at 2 a.m. between panic attacks. I chose the casket color by default. I picked the music Daniel hated least. No one helped. Not my family. My parents called once to ask what time the funeral was, and whether it would be the black kind or the colorful celebration kind. Amanda texted, "Sorry for your loss. Let me know if you need help with the playlist." The day of the funeral was bright. Blue skies, birds chirping like the world wasn't broken. Grace wore a blue dress. "Because Daddy said I look like a princess in blue," she whispered. I braided her hair, the way Daniel used to. I smiled through tears as I tucked the braid behind her ear. Kevin's colleagues came early, quiet in their grief. Some brought casseroles. Others brought tissues. All of them brought stories, silly little stories about Daniel's jokes, his obsession with spreadsheets, how he once talked a client out of an unnecessary loan just because it was the right thing to do. Grace listened to every word. My parents and Amanda arrived 20 minutes late. They made a minor scene, finding their seats in the front row. My mother hugged me with too much perfume. Traffic was terrible. Amanda couldn't find a dress that fit the occasion. I said nothing. During the service, Amanda kept checking her phone. My father kept looking at his watch. My mother dabbed at dry eyes like it was a performance. But Daniel's brother Aaron, he sat next to Grace and held her hand the entire time. His flight from Japan had landed just hours before the funeral, but he hadn't slept. His eyes were red. His hands trembled. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't think I could stand. But I saw Grace, brave, small Grace in her blue dress, and I stood. I talked about Daniel's stupid jokes, his war on cilantro, his obsession with real maple syrup. I talked about how he put family first, always. The irony of those words landed like a punch as I glanced at my parents already gathering their coats before the last song had even played. The reception was held at our home. My friends and Daniel's coworkers cleaned dishes, served food, played with Grace. My parents and Amanda sat like royalty on the couch, accepting condolences they didn't deserve. My father poured himself a second drink and said to Uncle James Daniel was doing well. Partner track. The insurance must be substantial. I stood behind him, frozen. I could have screamed. I could have slapped him. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and threw away every glass he touched. That night, Grace asked, "Why didn't Grandpa cry?" I didn't have an answer. 2 weeks after the funeral, just when I thought the worst was over, my parents showed up at my door. No call, no warning, just the sound of tires on gravel and my mother's shadow behind the frosted glass. I should have ignored it. I should have pretended Grace and I weren't home. But I was still that daughter, the one trained to be polite, to be accommodating, even to the people who'd abandoned me when I needed them most. I opened the door. "We were in the neighborhood," my mother said with a smile far too bright for a woman who'd just buried her son-in-law. My father gave me a firm nod. "Thought we'd check in. See how you and Grace are holding up." Grace was at school. I told them so. My mother responded, "Good. That gives us a chance to talk openly." That should have been the first red flag. But I was too tired, too cracked open to push back. I ushered them in, automatically slipping into host mode. I brewed coffee, set out mugs, placed napkins. I didn't owe them courtesy, but muscle memory is a powerful thing. They sat on the couch like they owned the place. My father inspected the new sound system Daniel had installed just a few weeks before he died. "Nice setup," he muttered, running a finger along the speakers. Daniel always had good taste. The past tense stung like vinegar on a wound. After 10 minutes of awkward small talk, school, work, my mother's book club, my father cleared his throat. It was the sound he always made before delivering a lecture. "Nora, we wanted to talk to you about your situation." My situation? Financially, my mother clarified, adjusting the hem of her cardigan. "Now that Daniel's gone." I blinked. "We're okay. Daniel planned well. He left everything in order." "That's what we wanted to discuss," my father said, leaning forward, his hand steepled like a corporate board member. "Your mother and I are getting older. Our retirement fund took a hit last quarter. Health care isn't cheap." I stared at them. "Are you asking me for money?" My mother at least had the grace to look embarrassed. My father didn't flinch. "We thought, given Daniel's position and the life insurance, that you might be in a position to help family. After all, we are your parents." I put down my mug. "How much are you thinking?" I asked quietly. He brightened, completely missing the edge in my voice. "Well, we thought a 50% split would be reasonable. Half for us, half for you and Grace. That way we can secure our retirement and help Amanda. You know how hard it's been for her as an artist. 50% of Daniel's insurance, of the money meant to secure Grace's future." I repeated the words slowly, like I needed to hear how insane they sounded. The daughter you couldn't even comfort when her husband died, now you want her to hand over her child's future so you can retire comfortably? My mother opened her mouth, but I stood up. "Get out." "Nora," my father began. "Out of my house," I said, my voice rising. "How dare you come here, pretending to care, just to get your hands on money Daniel left for Grace? How dare you?" My mother reached for my hand. "We raised you, Nora. We paid for your education. We helped with the down payment on your first house. It's only fair you give back." I stepped back like she'd burned me. "He died. Daniel died. This isn't some windfall or jackpot. This is the last thing he could ever give us. And you want to get it like vultures. No." My father's voice turned cold. There's no need to be dramatic. Daniel knew the risks. He should have taken better care of himself. That was it. That was the moment something in me snapped. The grief that had kept me docile turned into something sharper, angrier. I pointed to the door. Get out. You don't get to blame Daniel for dying. You don't get to profit from his death. And you sure as hell don't get to pretend you've earned a cent of what he left behind. They left in a huff, my mother muttering about ungrateful daughters, my father saying we'd revisit this conversation when emotions weren't running so high. I slammed the door behind them. I sank to the floor and shook with rage. Not sadness, rage. Later that afternoon, when I picked Grace up from school, she was unusually quiet. In the car, she glanced up and asked, "Were Grandma and Grandpa at our house today?" My stomach twisted. Yes. Did they bring something for us? I paused. No, baby. They just came to talk about grown-up things. She looked down at her lap. Did they ask about Daddy's money? My heart stopped. What makes you say that? I heard Grandpa at the funeral. He told Uncle James that we'd be set for life now that Daddy was gone. I had no words, only a rising nausea. Even Grace had heard it. She turned her face toward the window. I'd give all the money in the world just to have Daddy back. I reached over and took her hand. Me too, sweetheart, I whispered. Me too. That night, after Grace went to bed, I sat in the living room in silence. The air felt too still, like the house itself was holding its breath. I thought of my parents' faces, entitled, expectant, and the way they had twisted Daniel's death into some twisted opportunity. And then I thought of Daniel, his voice, his hands, his warnings I never heard. I called Aaron. He picked up on the first ring, even though it was 3 a.m. in Tokyo. Nora? Are you okay? No, I said. They came. My parents. They want 50% of the insurance payout. They said it would help them retire, that I owe them. Silence. Then Aaron's voice, tight with fury. They want half of what Daniel left Grace. That's disgusting. I know. My voice cracked. But they're not going to stop. You know how my father is. When he wants something, Aaron exhaled. Listen to me. Daniel talked to me about this. He was worried. Your dad had asked him for money, twice. Investment opportunities, he called them. But they were obvious grabs. Daniel turned him down, but he said he thought your father would try again if anything ever happened to him. I froze. He never told me. He didn't want to hurt you, Aaron said gently. He was trying to protect you. My throat tightened. He always was. The next morning, I called Thomas, Daniel's friend and our estate attorney. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. When I explained what happened, he didn't sound surprised. Unfortunately, he said, this happens more than you'd think. Family members who feel entitled to insurance money or inheritances. But the good news is, Daniel made everything airtight. You're the sole beneficiary. Grace is named in a separate education trust. Your parents have no legal standing to claim any of it. Could they contest it? He paused. They can try, but they'll lose. The will is clear, executed properly. Daniel was of sound mind, and there's no clause that includes them in anything. It should have made me feel better, but all I could think was, they'll still come. They won't stop. After we hung up, I went to the home office. I hadn't touched it since Daniel died. His folders were still perfectly labeled. Finance, taxes, Grace's drawings tucked into file sleeves, his pens lined up in neat rows. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, and there it was, a sealed envelope with my name on it. My heart stopped. Daniel's handwriting. I sat down on the floor and stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a letter, dated 3 months ago. My dearest Nora, if you're reading this, it means the doctor's concerns were more serious than I let on. I didn't want to scare you. I'm sorry. I've updated the will and the insurance policies, just in case. Everything goes to you, with a protected trust for Grace's education and long-term care. I know you'll use it wisely. I know you'll live with purpose, even in pain. But there's something else you need to know. Your father has approached me multiple times under the guise of investment advice. It wasn't subtle. He expects access to our resources if anything happens to me. Please don't let that happen. Grace's future comes first. Always. I love you. You and Grace are everything. Whatever happens, know that I tried to shield you from as much as I could. And I'm still trying now. Daniel, the tears came hard and fast. My chest caved in on itself. He knew. He knew this would happen. And he tried to spare me from it. Even from the grave, Daniel was still fighting to protect me and Grace. Still putting up walls where I had none. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Then I called Thomas again. There's a letter, I said, in Daniel's handwriting. It confirms everything. That's good, he replied. You don't need it legally, but emotionally it's powerful. He paused. You should bring it with you, if they try to pressure you again. Sometimes a dead man's voice is the only one they'll actually listen to. I looked over at the closed door to Grace's room. The soft hum of her white noise machine drifted through the hall. That little girl had already lost so much. I wasn't going to let them take anything else. The invitation came as a text from my father, like it was some kind of company meeting. Sunday, 2 p.m., family discussion. Bring Grace. No explanation. No apology. Just a command. I almost deleted it, but something in me said, go. Not for them. Not to negotiate, but to put a stop to whatever they were planning, once and for all. That morning, I dressed Grace in her favorite yellow sweater. She clutched a manila envelope to her chest like it was a shield. Can I bring this? She asked. It's something I've been working on. I hesitated. What is it? She smiled. Something Daddy taught me. As we drove to my parents' house, I rehearsed what I'd say. Calm, direct, no tears, no outbursts. I would not let them turn my grief into a transaction. When we arrived, their driveway was packed. I recognized the cars, Aunt Rita, Uncle James, my dad's brother Terry, and his wife Barbara. They'd turned this into a tribunal, a staged performance. They thought numbers would make them stronger. My mother opened the door. Nora, Grace, come in. Everyone's waiting. Her tone was polished, like a hostess welcoming guests to brunch. Not a mother who tried to gut her daughter's future 2 weeks earlier. We walked into the living room. My father sat in his recliner, like a judge presiding over court. Amanda was perched on the armrest, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone. The air was thick with expectation. Thank you for coming, my father said, his hands clasped. We have important matters to discuss. I remained standing. Whatever you have to say it in front of Grace. My mother frowned. This isn't really. If it's not appropriate for her, it's not appropriate at all. There was a beat of silence. Then my father nodded. Fine, let's begin. As you know, your mother and I have supported you throughout your life. College tuition, your first home. And now that Daniel's passing has resulted in a substantial payout, he passed me a printed document, a spreadsheet. We believe a fair distribution would be 50% for your mother and me, 15% for Amanda. The remainder is, of course, for you and Grace. I stared at the numbers. They'd somehow gotten the exact insurance figure. Uncle James must have leaked it. He worked in insurance. My eyes scanned the paper, my mind numb. Then I looked up. You want 65% of what Daniel left to his daughter. I said flatly, for your retirement and Amanda's art career. Amanda finally looked up from her phone. You're rich now. Why does it even matter? The room buzzed. My mother added softly, we all have needs, Nora. And family helps family. Family, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Like the kind who couldn't even leave a birthday party when I called sobbing? That kind. We've apologized for that, my father said sternly. This isn't productive. No, I cut in. You know what's not productive? Raising a child with no understanding of compassion. But somehow, I managed to raise one who does. I turned to Grace. She stepped forward, still clutching her envelope. I have something to say, she said, her small voice firm. My mother forced a smile. Sweetie, the adults are. This is about Daddy, Grace said louder now. And it's about what he would want. Everyone fell silent. She opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a child's drawing, but structured like a bill. At the top, invoice for real love and support. Below that, handwritten lines. Hugging Mommy when she cried $0, not provided. Coming to see us after Daddy died, $0, not provided. Helping me feel safe, $0, not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless, but never paid. Total due, $0. She handed it to my father. This is what you earned, she said, because you only came when there was money. No one moved. No one spoke. My mother's eyes welled up. Amanda looked like she'd been slapped. My father. His hands trembled slightly as he held the paper, but his lips stayed shut. I think we're done here, I said softly, taking Grace's hand. Don't contact us again unless it's to apologize and to change. We walked out the same door I'd entered 1,000 times before, but this time it felt like a threshold, the final one. Outside, the sky was gray and cold, but Grace looked up at me and asked, was I brave? I knelt down. You were Daddy's kind of brave, I said. You told the truth, even when it hurt. And for the first time in weeks, I felt strong again. The silence after we left their house was almost comforting, like a pressure had been lifted. A rope finally cut. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other holding Grace's. When we got home, my phone started vibrating. First my father, then my mother, then Amanda. Calls, voicemails, texts, some angry, some tearful, some pretending none of it had happened. I blocked them all. The next morning, I forwarded the details of the confrontation to Thomas, including the distribution proposal and Grace's drawing, now framed on our kitchen counter like a small revolution. I told him, if they try anything legally, I want them stopped before they even start. He replied within 10 minutes. They won't get far, but it's smart to prepare. For the next few days, there was quiet. Then came the letters. A bouquet arrived, white lilies, Daniel's least favorite flower, with a card that read, family disagreements can be painful. Let's move past this. We love you. The envelope wasn't signed. Another message came through a mutual family friend. Aunt Barbara called from an unknown number. I wanted to let you know, not everyone agrees with what your parents did. Terry, and I didn't know they were going to ambush you like that. We thought it was about a memorial fund for Daniel. I believed her. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry we didn't speak up. The flood of support from unexpected corners helped. Uncle James, who I thought had leaked the policy number, sent a handwritten apology. I shouldn't have said anything. I see now what it cost you. Even my cousin Jennifer, Amanda's own daughter, emailed me. I've watched how they treat you my whole life. I'm glad you finally said no. But the good couldn't fully drown out the bad. My father sent a typed letter on business letterhead, as if that made it official. Unless we can come to a reasonable arrangement, he wrote, we may need to reconsider our relationship with you and Grace. The implied threat hung like smoke in the air. Reconsider? They'd already done that the moment they showed up asking for money. I gave the letter to Thomas. File it. I want every word documented. A week later, my mother showed up at Grace's school. The front office called me immediately. She tried to sign Grace out, said she was taking her for a treat. My blood ran cold. When I arrived, my mother was still outside, standing beneath the flagpole like she was waiting for a ride to church. She looked smaller, almost frail, but the moment she saw me, the theatrics began. "You're turning the whole family against us," she said, her voice trembling. "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself. You can't just cut us off. We're your parents." "I'm not cutting you off," I replied, my tone measured. "I'm asking you to respect our boundaries, to stop showing up where you're not wanted, to stop pretending this is about love when it's always been about control." Tears welled in her eyes. "But we're family." "No," I said. "Not anymore. Not like this." She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "This is your choice," I said. "You can be grandparents Grace feels safe with, or people she remembers as predators in nice clothing. But you don't get both." She didn't answer, just stood there, her hand hanging in midair as I walked away. That night, I held Grace a little longer than usual. She didn't ask about Grandma or Grandpa. She asked what kind of cookies Daniel liked best. I told her. We baked them together. Aaron called the next morning. "How are things?" "Calmer," I said. "But I know it's not over." He didn't deny it. "People like your father, they don't handle no well." "I know," I said. "But for the first time, I don't care. He doesn't get to define what family means anymore." There was a pause on the line. Then Aaron said, "Daniel would be proud of you." I closed my eyes. "I think he already is." 3 months after Daniel died, I finally opened the last box of his things. It had been sitting in our bedroom closet like a ghost. Inside were baseball caps, an old cologne bottle, and a half-finished scrapbook Grace had made him for Father's Day. She sat next to me as I flipped through it, stickers, drawings, photos of them eating pancakes, shaped like dinosaurs. "Daddy always picked out the good crayons," she whispered. "Of course he did," I said, kissing her forehead. "He was color-coordinated in everything." Aaron had moved into our guest room by then. His contract in Japan had ended, and he took a teaching position at the University of Minnesota. "Daniel made me promise," he said one night over dinner. "When you were pregnant with Grace, he told me, if anything ever happens, you take care of them like they're yours." I intend to keep that promise. He did. He picked Grace up from school when I had late meetings, helped her with science projects, took her to chess club, never once tried to replace Daniel, but kept his presence alive in the most gentle, quiet ways. Kevin's, Daniel's, parents visited every few weeks. Diana taught Grace how to bake her dad's favorite molasses cookies. Robert built her a small raised garden in the backyard, just like Daniel had always talked about. This was family. Not perfect, but present, consistent, real. My parents didn't call. Not for a while. And I didn't reach out. Then, on what would have been our 13th wedding anniversary, I received a letter. Not typed. Not rehearsed. Just ink on a folded piece of note card. "Dear Nora and Grace, we've spent these last few months reflecting on our actions, on the pain we caused you. There's no excuse for how we behaved. We let fear and entitlement poison something sacred. We failed you, and we failed Daniel. We're not asking for forgiveness, only the chance to someday earn your trust again." Carol and Brad, I read it once, then twice. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat with it. Aaron found me on the porch that evening. "They wrote." I nodded. Different tone. "Yes. For once, it wasn't about money." "Do you believe them?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But Grace deserves to know what accountability looks like, if it's real." We didn't respond right away. But a few weeks later, they sent Grace a birthday gift. A beginner astronomy kit and a book on constellations. For the first time ever, it wasn't pink, sparkly, or generic. It was something she actually loved. "Can we see them?" she asked one night. "Maybe just for ice cream." So we did. We met at her favorite shop. I laid out the rules. No mention of the past. No gifts over $30. No taking her anywhere without me present. They agreed. The visit was awkward, but they asked questions about her drawings, listened when she spoke, didn't talk over her. When we left, Grace whispered, "They're trying." I saw, I said. Trying doesn't erase what happened, but it matters. Over the following months, we allowed short visits in public places. They didn't push. They didn't cross lines. I still didn't trust them fully, but I didn't have to. Trust wasn't given all at once. It was earned back, one uneventful encounter at a time. At the 1-year mark of Daniel's death, we held a small memorial in our backyard. Barbecue, music, photos strung on twine, stories, laughter. Grace gave a speech, short and clear. My daddy loved real syrup, funny socks, and being a good person. We miss him, but we're doing okay. We're strong, like him. My parents were there. They sat in the back, quiet, respectful. They didn't make it about them. That was enough. After the service, my mother approached me, her hands clasped like she was holding something fragile. "We've been going to therapy," she said, "trying to understand not just what we did after Daniel died, but everything we ignored before." I didn't answer. I just nodded. Some things don't need words, just time. A few months later, Aaron helped me launch a nonprofit in Daniel's name, offering free financial literacy courses for young families and single mothers. Grace helped design the logo. It wasn't just a project. It was a legacy. And on the 2nd anniversary of his passing, Grace and I sat by the lake, watching the sun go down. She skipped a stone and said, "I think the envelope I gave Grandpa helped them." "Why do you think that?" "Because now they listen." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I miss him, Mom." "I know, sweetheart. Me too. Every day." But this time the ache didn't feel empty. It felt like a thread, connecting us, anchoring us, not to the past, but to each other, to who we are now, to who we choose to be, to the family we build, one choice at a time.